Well, the solar system is itself a marvel of engineering and design. But today, natural science tries to minimize the significance of this design and argue for a purely natural origin for both the solar system and the cosmos. Despite their view on origins, however, the universe is referred to today as a cosmos, which means ordered and harmonious. That's what the word cosmos means. It's the opposite of the word chaos. But the universe is not a chaotic mess like you would expect from following a great cosmic explosion like the Big Bang. It's orderly and harmonious. That's what the word cosmos comes from. So we're going to take a tour of the solar system. I will pause briefly on this slide where there's a QR code here that will allow you to take down the lecture notes. So we're going to take us a little tour of the solar system. We're going to discuss the fine-tuning that we see that makes life possible. During our tour, we're going to stop at each of the planets and many of the moons as well and discuss their unique qualities and the many discoveries that have been made by space probes and the like that have come to challenge the naturalism, a natural origin of the solar system. As each new discovery is made today in astronomy, the design and handiwork of our Creator is revealed time and time again. Well, the astronomical bodies, as we should know, were formed on the fourth day of creation. Genesis 1:14-19 describes their various purposes. And God said, "Let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to separate the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and years, and let there be lights in the expanse of the heavens to give light upon the earth." And it was so. And God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule the day and the lesser light to rule the night, and the stars also. And God set them in the expanse of the heavens to give light on the earth, to rule over the day and over the night, and to separate the light from the darkness. And God saw that it was good, and there was evening and there was morning, the fourth day. Well, humans have long struggled to explain the precision of the cosmos through various cosmological models. Nicholas Copernicus, shown here, is responsible for our current model of the solar system and is regarded today as the founder of modern astronomy. He referred to the cosmos as, quote, "built for us by the best and most orderly workman of all." Most of the scientists that were responsible for not just the scientific revolution, but were the founders of most of our science disciplines, believed in the God of that the God of the Bible made the cosmos, made the earth, and most were very committed to the existence of God, and for most Christianity as well. Well, rather than chaos, randomness, and disorder, as one would expect again from a cosmic accident like the Big Bang, we find clockwork precision governs the cosmos at every level. The solar system, shown here, consists of our sun, 8 planets. We got 4 terrestrial planets or rocky planets, 4 gas giants. Plus we got the dwarf planet Pluto, asteroids, meteorites, and comets. Astronomers have determined that the other planets in the solar system stabilize the distance of the Earth from the sun, keeping the Earth from approaching too close or moving too far away. These planets also protect the Earth from comets, meteors, and asteroids. God created for us a remarkable solar system positioned around the sun that was perfectly formed and positioned. Our space telescopes and spacecrafts have given us close-up views of these planets, shown here. All of these photos were taken by spacecrafts. Our technologies have given us close views of these things that no one has ever seen before. Previously, these planets were just seen as pinpoints of light. Now, we are able to see aspects of God's creation because of technology no one else has seen before. It is truly amazing to live in these times when technologies have allowed us to see and investigate parts of God's creation that no one in past generations has seen. Truly, God's handiwork has been revealed to us like no other time in the history of the earth. Well, while the solar system is a masterfully engineered body, secular scientists claim that it formed by purely natural processes from a nebula. Now, nebulae are clouds of gas and dust that are believed to be the remains of stars that have exploded or undergone supernova. We call these nebula. Many of these nebula are massive. Within the Orion constellation shown here, we find a nebula called the Orion Nebula, and this is massive. It is 13 light years in size. To understand the size of this, traveling at the speed of light, that's 186,000 miles per second, it would take 13 years to get from one side of this nebula to the other side of the nebula. These things are just absolutely massive. And again, believed to be gas and dust clouds left behind by stars that have exploded or undergone supernova. Well, secular science claims that our solar system, both the sun and the planets, formed about 4.6 billion years ago through purely natural processes within one of these nebula. The theory asserts that as the nebula rotated due to regional movements within the galaxy, it began to collapse, became condensed somehow, and flattened into a disk. A central bulge formed in the middle and became our sun. Smaller collections of materials became the planets. This is the prevailing theory for the origin of the solar system. Well, there's a number of problems, a number of problems with this, a number of theories that have been put forth to explain the mysterious collapse of the nebula that formed our solar system. Some say it collapsed under its own gravity. Others invoke cooling to reverse the natural tendency of a gas to expand. And more recently, collisions have, as a mechanism, have begun to dominate the theory on the solar system formation. Now, this is a long-standing theory, in fact, going all the way back to the 1700s. To give you a little background on this, in 1755, Immanuel Kant first argued that gaseous clouds, these nebula, slowly rotated and gradually collapsed and flattened due to gravity, eventually forming stars and planets. In 1796, Pierre-Simon Laplace put forth a theory arguing for a contracting and cooling proto-solar cloud, what he called the proto-solar nebula. He argued that as it cooled and contracted, it flattened and spun more rapidly, throwing off or shedding a series of gaseous rings of material. And according to him, the planets condensed from this material. This is a long-standing theory. Well, there's a major problem with this theory. It violates some of the basic laws of physics. See, gas and dust clouds don't contract, they expand through what we call diffusion. Diffusion is a process through which molecules spread out through time. It occurs both in gases and in liquids. If for example, if I spritz a little bit of perfume over here, there's a concentration of like perfume or vapor over here. Those molecules in that little cloud of perfume will continue. Molecules have a little bit of inherent motion to them and causes them to bang into one another. As they collide into one another, they move further apart. Well, when you add energy, by the way of heat or electricity or anything else, those molecules move even faster and faster, and they spread out even more quickly. This happens in both liquids and in gases. In a cold situation, diffusion happens very slowly. And when you add energy to it, it's going to happen much more rapidly. Well, astronomer Fred Whipple stated in The Mystery of Comets the following. He says, precisely how a section of interstellar cloud collapsed gravitationally into a star is still a challenging theoretical problem. Astronomers have yet to find an interstellar cloud in the actual process of collapse. They've yet to see one in the process of collapse. And this remains a prevailing theory going back all the way to the 1700s. And Dr. Don DeYoung, shown here, agrees. Now, he has a PhD in physics from Iowa State and is a professor and department chair at Grace College, and he's the president of the Creation Research Society, one of the big creation organizations in this country. You have Institute for Creation Research, Answers in Genesis, and Creation Research Society, kind of the big three. He's the president of the CRS. He says this, the complete birth of a star has never been observed. The principles of physics demand some special conditions for star formation and also for a long time period. A cloud of hydrogen gas must be compressed to a sufficiently small size so that gravity dominates. He continues. In space, however, almost every gas cloud is light years in size, hundreds of times greater than the critical size needed for a stable star. As a result, outward gas pressure causes these clouds to spread out further, not contract. Danny Faulkner, shown here, he holds a PhD in astronomy from Indiana University and taught at the University of South Carolina for 26 years. He today serves as the editor of the Creation Research Society Quarterly, a quarterly publication produced by the CRS, and has published over 100 papers in various scientific journals. He now works as a researcher and author and a speaker for Answers in Genesis, which is the big organization that built the full-size ark in the Creation Museum down in Indiana. Anyway, Danny Faulkner says this: most astronomers believe that clouds gradually contract under their own weight to form stars. This process has never been observed, but if it did occur, it would take many human lifetimes. He continues, it is known that clouds do not spontaneously collapse to form stars. The clouds possess considerable mass, but they are so large that their gravity is very feeble. Any decrease in size would be met by an increase in gas pressure that would cause a cloud to re-expand. This whole theory violates some basic laws of physics. Well, again, clouds expand until they become evenly distributed. So if that little spritz of perfume over here, those molecules will continue to spread out. Eventually, you would start to smell it back there, and eventually become evenly distributed. This is what gases do. They do not spontaneously collapse to form stars. The inability for gravitational contraction and cooling to account for this phenomena has led to another theory. This is that collisions were responsible. It is argued that a supernova nearby might have caused a nebula to become compressed sufficiently. An obvious problem with this mechanism, or that the nebula theory in general, if you may have noticed, is that it requires what? The origin of stars requires what? Stars. It requires a nebula, a gas and dust cloud produced by a star that is theoretically exploded or gone supernova to be compressed to sufficiently dense size to allow new stars to form. All current theories for the origin of stars require pre-existing stars. There's no theory on the table that accounts for those first stars. Well, the other bodies in the solar system, meaning your asteroids and planetesimals and planets, are believed to have formed by accretion. As gas and dust coalesced, larger particles of dust would form. These stuck together to become rocks, which became even bigger rocks, which became asteroids, and then planetesimals, which became planets. During accretion, small grains stick to one another via electromagnetic forces, like a static electricity causes things to stick together until they're massive enough to attract via gravity to form planetesimals. Everything has a little bit of gravity. The larger something is, the more gravitational attraction it has. Well, this is the prevailing theory for the origin of the solar system. The nebula theory is said to account for a number of the features of the solar system, in fact. For example, the flattened shape of the solar system. All the planets orbit around the sun in a disk called the plane of the ecliptic, except for Pluto, which is a little bit weird. It's said to explain the counterclockwise orbits of all the planets. It's said to explain the existence of the inner rocky planets and the outer gaseous planets. Being too close to the sun made it impossible for things like water and volatile gases to condense, and so they say only rocky planets would form there. Further from the sun, being cooler, gases were able to condense, forming what we call the gas giants, like Saturn and Jupiter, etc. However, the physics of it doesn't work. You can get up to planetesimals, but not planets with this view, with the physics. Martin Hewitt says in the Astrophysical Concepts, once these planetesimals have been formed, further growth of planets may occur through gravitational accretion into large bodies, but just how that takes place is not understood. It could happen, and it must have happened because they're there, And they had to have formed through purely natural processes because, that's kind of the view. Furthermore, the nebula theory and the movement necessary to create the flattened disk were based on previous models of the solar system. However, we now know that the solar system is traveling around the galaxy at an average speed of 514,000 miles per hour, 143 miles per second. Did you know you were traveling 500,000 miles per hour? Yeah, you're really booking. And your hair's not even blowing. You're like cruising. Watch this. This is one of the newest models of the solar system, which was referred to as the helical model, where the sun is traveling around the galaxy as the galaxy spins at an average speed of 500,000 miles per hour, pulling the planets with it in tow. Now, what an amazing thing that is. And can we understand the physics of that? That this motion is relying upon some larger scale motion in the galaxy, and the motion in the galaxy is probably even relying upon larger scale motions in the universe. All of that motion brought down further and further to produce the motion of our solar system. All right, well, the question we need to ask is this: what does the evidence really support? Does it support the nebula model, or does it support a biblical creation model? The biblical creation model argues that the solar system formed recently by an intelligent creator to provide us with a habitable place to live. According to the nebula theory, every moon or planet formed along similar lines and should not be too different from each other and conform to a single pattern. Is this what we actually find in the solar system? The closer that things are to one another in the solar system, the more similar they should be in composition, in form, and type. So let's take a look at the solar system, noting its design features and uniqueness that decries creation and defies the nebula theory. First, we'll look at the inner planets, what we call the terrestrial planets. These include Mercury, Venus, Earth, and Mars. We'll start with Mercury. Mercury is the closest planet to the sun. It's smaller than all the other planets except Pluto, even smaller than Ganymede and Titan, the moons of Saturn and Jupiter. Temperatures on Mercury range from 840 degrees to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. Mercury looks much like our moon, with lots of craters. If you didn't know this was Mercury, you would think this was a picture of the moon. This was photographed by the Messenger spacecraft back in 2008. Here's a colorized image of Mercury from Mariner 10. This was taken in 74, 75. Well, in addition to taking pictures of Mercury, Mariner 10 took measurements of Mercury's gravity and other properties. And they found a big surprise. It was discovered to have the highest known density of all planets, other than the Earth. The problem is, Mercury is too small to have such a high density. Its small size means it doesn't have a strong gravitational field and should not have compacted all the material into such a high density. But there it is, with this incredibly high density. In fact, up to 75% of the radius of Mercury is thought to be represented by an iron core, shown here in a cutout view in this image from NASA. The solution to this mystery is described by Taylor in Solar System Evolution, A New Perspective. He says, the driving force behind previous attempts to account for Mercury has been to fit the high density of the planet into some preferred overall solar system scheme. It has become clear that none of these proposed models work, and the high density is conveniently accommodated by the large impact hypothesis, which makes Mercury unique. Thus, the hypothetical solution for Mercury's unusual density is known as the large impact hypothesis. It is believed that early in the history of the solar system, an asteroid must have crashed into Mercury. The lighter material must have been stripped away by this collision, leaving behind the dense planet that we see there today. This is an artist's conception that shows a celestial body about the size of our moon slamming into Mercury at a great speed. Well, cosmic collisions are invoked to explain most of the unusual features of our solar system. So many, in fact, that we might consider them to have superpowers, as we will see. Well, Mariner 10, again back in 74 and 75, also discovered that Mercury has a magnetic field, which was a huge mystery for decades. If it's billions of years old, it can't have a magnetic field unless the core is molten, enabling it to rejuvenate that magnetic field. But it's too small and too old to have a molten core. It should have frozen long ago. Now, this mystery remained for 3 decades until it was discovered in 2007 that Mercury has a molten core. Researchers working with high precision planetary radars, including the Goldstone Solar System radar of NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California, have discovered strong evidence that the planet Mercury has a molten core. The finding explains a more than 3-decade-old planetary mystery that began with the flight of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory's Mariner 10 spacecraft. They continue. Scientists had not expected to find a magnetic field on Mercury, said Professor here. Planetary magnetic fields are associated with molten cores, and the prevailing theory was that the planet was too small to have a molten core. Scientists theorized that Mercury consisted of a silicate mantle surrounded by a solid iron core. This iron was considered solid, or so the theory went, because small planets like Mercury cool off rapidly after their formation. If Mercury followed this pattern, then its core should have been frozen long ago. But there it is. Mercury defies explanation. If the nebula theory is true, it can't be dense, but it is. It can't have a magnetic field, but it does. It can't have a molten core, but it does. Well, we're told by Paul in 1 Corinthians that God hath chosen the foolish things of the world to confound the wise, and God hath chosen the weak things of the world to confound the things which are mighty. Truly. Well, let's look at Venus. It should be very similar to the Earth. It's our sister planet, if you will, very close. Both planets supposedly formed at the same time, at roughly the same place, from the same material, by the same natural processes, and so should be very similar in size, mass, and composition. Well, Venus was recorded by the Jupiter-bound Galileo spacecraft shortly after its gravity-assisted flyby of Venus in 1990. Galileo's glimpse of the veiled planet shows it swirling with sulfuric acid clouds. The atmosphere is primarily carbon dioxide with clouds of concentrated sulfuric acid. It has a massive greenhouse effect, making Venus the hottest place in the solar system. 900 degrees Fahrenheit. It also has a massive atmospheric pressure of 90 atmospheres. That's 90 times what we experience right here. And it has no magnetic field. A big mystery in explaining the origin of Venus is that it rotates backwards. It rotates retrograde, or what we clockwise, with respect to their orbit. Other planets rotate counterclockwise. Explanations for the backward rotation have included gravitational braking on a tidal bulge, but Venus doesn't have a tidal bulge. It's almost perfectly round. Today's explanation is that Venus formed as predicted by the nebula accretion model, but then an asteroid hit it and spun it around the wrong way. The superpowers of the asteroid. Well, there's no evidence for a collision. Venus's axial tilt is only 2 degrees from perfectly perpendicular to the ecliptic plane of the solar system. Its orbit is the most circular in the solar system. The only evidence that it got struck by an asteroid is that otherwise Venus would contradict the nebula theory, rotating in a different direction than the other planets. What we're not told about Venus, it should be very similar to the Earth, but it has no magnetic field. And its crustal structure is very different. Its surface is obviously young, and it rotates the wrong way.